For years, the electric car in India was treated as a fragile experiment. Automakers would take an existing petrol chassis, hollow it out, and squeeze a small battery pack wherever it would fit to create an urban toy. By 2026, the market reality is completely different. Brands like Tata, Mahindra, and MG now account for over 85% of all electric sales, achieving this by building their vehicles on dedicated, ground-up electric architectures. These MIN platforms allow for entirely flat floors, precise weight distribution, and liquid-cooled battery packs large enough to power a house. The manufacturing lines producing these vehicles operate at the exact same industrial scale as their petrol counterparts, but the physical maturity of the hardware is often masked by the noise of the marketing brochure. Automakers routinely promise test cycle ranges extending past 600 kilometers, paired with the illusion of practically zero running costs. To calculate what an electric vehicle will actually cost you and how far it will actually drive, you have to observe how these machines interact with the real Indian road network. An EV purchase in 2026 is a precise financial calculation, dependent on how the vehicle interacts with its specific habitat. Stop-and-go city traffic is the exact environment where an internal combustion engine wastes the most fuel. For an electric vehicle, it is the optimal habitat. Through regenerative braking, the electric motor reverses its function every time the driver lifts off the accelerator. The vehicle actively harvests the friction of urban gridlock, feeding that kinetic energy directly back into the battery. Take that exact same vehicle out onto an open multi-lane highway, and the physics invert. Electric cars use a single-speed reduction gear instead of a multi-speed transmission. To maintain a cruising speed of 120 kilometers per hour, the motor has to spin exponentially faster. Add in the severe penalty of aerodynamic drag at high speeds, and the battery drains rapidly. This chart shows the discrepancy between lab testing and actual driving. An official ARAI claim of 450 kilometers will consistently shrink by 20 to 30% in the real world, dropping to roughly 350 kilometers once highway physics and air conditioning are factored in. Range anxiety rarely stems from a defective battery pack. It happens when a driver plans an interstate trip using marketing numbers instead of accounting for highway physics. When that highway range drops, drivers turn to the public infrastructure. India has aggressively expanded its network, installing nearly 40,000 public chargers across the ecosystem. Yet, electric vehicle adoption has significantly outpaced installation. The national ratio currently sits at roughly one public charger for every 235 electric vehicles on the road. This bottleneck requires owners to plan their routes meticulously. A 300-kilometer drive means cross-referencing multiple apps to ensure the designated charger is physically vacant and actively receiving power. The infrastructure also imposes a steep premium. Plugging into a public DC fast charger routinely costs around 20 rupees per kilowatt-hour, factoring in operator margins and commercial tariffs. At those rates, the energy cost to drive an electric car rises to nearly 3 rupees per kilometer. The wide gap between EV running costs and traditional petrol starts to close quickly. Relying entirely on the public charging network strips away the economic benefits of electric ownership, turning a money-saving asset into a high-friction financial liability. Even if you accept the charging logistics, one major psychological hurdle remains for first-time buyers: the assumption that the battery pack will simply die after a few years, leaving them with a massive replacement bill. This graph tracks actual battery telematics. Modern actively cooled packs lose an average of only 2.3% of capacity each year. Following that trajectory, it takes 10 to 12 years, or over 1,500 charge cycles, before dropping below the 70% replacement threshold. Automakers are now backing this data with aggressive policies. Several brands currently offer unlimited kilometer, 15-year lifetime battery warranties for the first owner. The hardware itself is no longer the primary risk factor. The ownership risk has shifted away from the vehicle and squarely onto the physical environment where you park it. To determine if an electric car makes financial sense, you only need to evaluate two conditions. The first is your required monthly mileage. Electric vehicles carry a higher upfront sticker price. If you drive less than 500 kilometers a month, it will take well over a decade to recover that premium through fuel savings. A petrol engine is the pragmatic choice. For drivers crossing the 1,000 kilometer a month threshold, the operational savings reduce the break-even period to under 5 years. The primary driver of these economics is the home base. A standard residential tariff of 8 rupees per kilowatt-hour brings the running cost down to a single rupee per kilometer. This comparison shows the home-charged EV rate against a comparable compact SUV running on petrol, which costs over 7 rupees per kilometer. For an active driver, that 6 rupee difference accumulates into over 1 lakh in operational savings every year. Capturing these specific economic benefits requires a reliable place to plug in. A dedicated home charger is the non-negotiable prerequisite. For apartment residents, securing that setup means navigating resident welfare associations, upgrading electrical panels, and dealing with the friction of retrofitting older building infrastructure. For the right buyer, the 2026 EV is a pragmatic financial tool. It is structurally mature, well-warrantied, and engineered to provide significant long-term value, but it cannot thrive in isolation. The vehicle only succeeds when you have established the infrastructure to support it, securing its optimal habitat before you ever drive it off the lot.